that on fire?
Y'all suck the good for these seats.
It does seem like they're kind of telling on themselves in a way, because they're like, this is violating my free speech. Why do you want to shake your rear end in front of kids so bad? Like, that kind of sounds like something else might be going on. Maybe we should check your hard drive.
I think there's going to be some people that might want to find out, can they go back and retroactively be prosecuted for what I would argue they are absolutely doing is they're flaunting state law. The state law is not off the books simply because we're being enjoined from enforcing it. Those actions are still illegal in the state of Texas.
Welcome to Sara Gonzales Unfiltered. So I teased this for you guys yesterday, over the weekend. I say this like it's a joyous occasion that I'm about to share with you. It's not, but that's fine. Over the weekend, I attended RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars Live. You may be like, why did you go to Oh, right, to do the thing that you do, which is to expose the drag shows that are welcoming all ages, to expose the drag shows that are allowing children into their venues when it's completely disgusting material. And this one was no different. This was at Dallas, Texas Broadway Music Hall at Fair Park. And here are just some of the lowlights, as it were.
I need to see somebody burning.
You need to come in then.
Huh?
You need to come in.
I can't. I'm burning. Can I make a house call?
Hey, dog, you look hot. Is that on fire?
Y'all suck the good for these seats. Come on, titties. Look at you with your big titties, bitch. And the homosexual right there, and a couple of bottoms right over here. What? Turn around, let everybody see your titties, bitch.
I get mad all over again every single time I watch that. As you could see, there were numerous minors in attendance, which I think anyone with two functioning brain cells can understand that this is child abuse. This doesn't belong in, I would argue, America for children, certainly not Texas. We should have higher standards than that. Well, the Texas legislature actually passed a law last session, SB 12, prohibiting venues from allowing children into sexually explicit performances. Now, this is commonly referred to as a drag ban by the left. Of course, it's not. By the way, you're telling on yourselves when you say that. It's not a drag ban, but LGBT groups sued and were able to get a permanent injunction blocking the state from enforcing the law. And now it will stay blocked until the court issues a final ruling on appeal. Now, before I bring on my guest, Texas State Representative Brian Harrison, I would like to play this short little clip that I filmed at this show where I would say drag queens sent kind of an ominous message to Texans. Watch.
Well be the mecca for drag entertainment. Y'all know that your state pageants are bigger than national pageants here in Texas. So because everything is bigger in Texas, I expect y'all to be so far the best audience on the tour.
Texas is the mecca of drag. Interesting. Welcome to the show, Texas State Representative Brian Harrison. Your thoughts, and did you just vomit before I introduced you?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have come on if I'd known you were going to force me to sit through a few minutes of that footage.
Sorry.
Look, you said it exactly right. The most offensive thing in all of the video clips that you just forced me and your viewers to endure was the little B-roll clips you interspersed there of not just minors. And we're not talking, I was seeing video there, not just of 16, 17. These people weren't videos of people on the bubble. There were very young children that were in attendance. And as the father of 4 young kids, the oldest is 10, I think that's far and away the most offensive thing that's going on here. They're clearly just trying to skirt, I would argue, both longstanding existing state law as well as the new laws that we passed in the last legislative session, which are being tied up in court right now. The state of Texas has long had laws enforcing certain types of community standards with regards to children. Like, for example, a child cannot go to a strip club in the state of Texas. And what these businesses like that are doing, they're clearly just getting around long-standing laws by calling them something else, but they're clearly putting on what is objectively, and I think any sane, sentient person would see, as adult content, adult material. And I want to highlight something you glossed over because I think it's critical to the point. Because people who are critical of what we are trying to do here in the state of Texas with the bills that we've had on the books for a long time, or laws, as well as the bill that became a law last session with regards to drag show bans for minors, is they're using the word drag show ban in the same way they're using like porn bans or book bans. There is no pornography banned in Texas. There are no books that are banned in Texas. Drag shows are not banned in Texas. Strip shows are not banned in Texas. We are simply saying you can't do certain things in the presence of minors in the state of Texas. And we tried to broaden that to make sure that what they were doing is getting around these sexually explicit, adult-oriented businesses, which have long been prohibited to children in the state of Texas, and making sure that we're going in and capturing this stuff. So incredibly offensive. I'm glad that Attorney General Ken Paxton is defending the new state statute. But look, this is absolutely disgusting, and please keep calling these people out. In the same way that they're saying that we're pushing book bans, that is a complete lie. We're not saying a thing about what adults can or can't do in the state of Texas. We are simply trying to protect our long-held community standards with the types of businesses that we are allowed to target children.
Yeah, it does seem, I mentioned it earlier, it does seem like they're kind of telling on themselves in a way, because they're like, this is violating my free speech. Why do you want to shake your rear end in front of kids so bad? Like, that kind of sounds like something else might be going on. Maybe we should check your hard drive or something. But so I have heard from my sources, I'll let you tell me what you've heard, if anything, but I've heard that it is likely that the federal appeals court will overturn the initial federal ruling, that perhaps this is a friendly court. So I have a couple questions that I'm going to dovetail off of that. If that were to happen, I want to know, like, can we retroactively prosecute these venue owners like Broadway Music Hall for hosting these performances in the meantime? Because it's great that I agree with you. Ken Paxton at the helm of things, I love and I trust him. But at the end of the day, children in Texas are left still able to get this content in the meantime while we're waiting.
Yeah, there's two issues that you asked about there. Happy to take both of them. Look, I do think the odds are pretty decent we're going to prevail. The idea that there's a First Amendment implication here, I think it's specious. I think it's facially absurd because, again, we are not, think what you want about it. Have whatever whatever reflexive reactions you have to the video of the adults you saw here. The state of Texas is not actually trying to impede somebody's First Amendment or free speech rights to conduct themselves how they want to conduct themselves. We are simply saying you can't conduct yourself like that in front of children, and certainly not as a commercial business enterprise. So I actually feel somewhat optimistic we're ultimately going to prevail. And then on the second part of this, which is where I think that the law clearly would have stopped what happened in the footage you showed there, is we're talking about something that didn't happen like in somebody's private home that was built on private property. We're talking about a performance, an adult-themed, sexually explicit performance in front of minors that was engaged in commerce on property that is governmental property. property in the state of Texas. So I do think they're operating at a little bit of risk here. And I think there's going to be some people that might want to find out, can they go back and retroactively be prosecuted for what I would argue they are absolutely doing is they're flaunting state law. The state law is not off the books simply because we're being enjoined from enforcing it. Those actions are still illegal in the state of Texas. We just can't enforce that prohibition right now. So I think they're operating at great risk. And quite frankly, whatever we can do to put the message out there that you shouldn't be cavorting like that, you shouldn't be pushing content that is clearly designed to be adult material, sexually themed businesses should not be targeting young children in the state of Texas.
Yeah, I totally agree. We're two sane people, so we agree on that. Yeah. But
you made a great point a second ago. They're outing themselves.
Right.
This isn't about free expression. Otherwise, they wouldn't be suing because they're making the point that they only care about doing this provided they can do what you just saw in that video in front of 5-year-olds. Because if they didn't care about that, they wouldn't be suing us in the first place. They are wanting to do this in front of children, and that's where I think the state of Texas is right to step in and say, not in our state. You can't do that.
So what action can the Texas legislature take? And maybe this isn't something that you guys are talking about yet, but I would say let's start talking about it now, because I hope that the law will prevail and the state of Texas will prevail. But what action could the state of Texas take if, let's say, the federal judge does uphold the current ruling and deems this whole law unconstitutional? Which, by the way, again, I don't want to be like a black pill. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I do think that I worked with you guys, some of the legislators, to craft the language in such a way that we thought that it would withstand. I mean, we knew it was immediately going to get sued, right? So we thought that it would withstand any sort of lawsuit. But let's just say that the judge upholds the current ruling. What's next for the state of Texas?
Well, so again, we'll have to wait and see what the courts ultimately say. And I know it's not terribly satisfying, but when you're dealing with issues like this, we are operating in what's more complicated and a nuanced area of law. If you were involved with the drafting of the legislation, you know it's harder to go after drag shows because then you have to define all of these terms, where it's much more simple if it's like a building that has, XXX outside and calls itself a strip club. That's an easier thing to prohibit a minor walking in by checking ID because they're telling the world what they're doing in here. But when they're going to at least put on what I think is these facially absurd arguments that no, what they're doing is not those types of things, it's these types of things, well, then you have to have very, very properly crafted statutory definitions in the law. So in the event that this fails on some First Amendment test, which I don't think is going to happen, but if it did, I think we just have to show courage and be willing to come back next session and readdress the issue, look at amending the bill. Maybe it's a more narrow or maybe a slight broadening of the scope of the definition to make sure we're capturing the types of behavior that you just saw, commercial, sexually explicit, designed to target children. Make sure that that cannot happen in the state of Texas while still protecting the First Amendment free expression rights of adults here in the state.
Well, I appreciate you. You're one of the good guys. And I'm like, now that we've got fresh blood coming in to help you, I'm like, help is on the way, Representative Harrison. So
I don't always get called one of the good guys down in Austin, so it's great being with friends like you. And yes, thank you. I'm so excited. You mentioned we got some reinforcements showing up in Austin next January to take the oath of office with us. And I'm excited for the great things we're going to do to preserve liberty and prosperity and the constitutional constraints and limited government and free markets here in the state of Texas next session.
I am too. And I appreciate you, sir. We'll talk soon.
Great talking to you, Sarah. Have a good one. God bless you.
You too. See ya. So we will be, by the way, doing more undercover pieces like these in the days and months to come, because if you know anything about me, you know that I will not rest until this shit is out of Texas and our kids are protected. Just letting you know. I'm putting you on notice, drag queens. I don't care what you do. Just don't do it in front of kids. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be back with the panel. First, we want to thank our sponsor, Birch Gold. So there's just a lot of instability right now. Don't know if you've noticed. If you read the newspaper or the internet or just walk outside your front door, you can see there's a lot of instability right now in our country. And I'm just saying, if you are not actually financially secure, if all of your eggs are in one basket, gold and silver, if you have not looked into this, is an excellent way to diversify your savings. It's actually, historically, gold and silver have been a hedge against inflation. They're a physical asset that is in high demand globally, from the wealthy to central banks. And so Go talk to my friends over at Birch Gold. You can actually own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account. So you can diversify an old IRA, 401k you got just lying around, okay? You can actually diversify that for no money out of pocket into an IRA in gold and silver. They can send you a free information kit explaining everything there is to know. And if it's not covered, they've got great people you can reach out to. My family does business with Birch Gold, so go check them out. You can text the word Sarah to 989898 to get that free, no obligation information kit. That is the word Sarah. There's no H in that. SARA to 989898. This is going to be a fun one today. Welcome to the show. Of course, Michael Quinn Sullivan. He is the filmmaker of Red Power, which I want to talk to you about later. Also, of course, publisher of Texas Scorecard. Happy you're here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Nice to be with you.
Yeah. Also joined by Eric July, Blaze TV contributor and founder of Ripaverse Comics, which you guys all need to go check out. You're into the comic book scene. I mean, if you're tired of seeing like gay and trans superheroes.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying. So last night, I know. Oh, I know. Boy, let me tell you the amount of times that I've uttered something and been like, it's really weird that I just had to say that.
Yeah.
So last night, Mark Zuckerberg actually released a letter to Jim Jordan and Jerry Nadler where he admitted a couple different things here, but one that he regretted working with the Biden-Harris administration and the FBI to censor stories on COVID and the Hunter Biden laptop story. But this isn't actually new information, so it's strange why he keeps rehashing these old details. Almost 2 years ago to the day, Mark Zuckerberg actually said this on the Joe Rogan Experience. Watch.
There was a lot of attention on Twitter during the election because of the Hunter Biden laptop story. The New York Post.
Yeah, we had that too.
Yeah, so you guys censored that as well?
So we took a different path than Twitter. The FBI, I think, basically came to us, some folks on our team, and was like, hey, just so you know, like you should be on high alert. We thought that there was a lot of Russian propaganda in the 2016 election. We have it on notice that basically there's about to be some kind of dump of that's similar to that. So just be vigilant. What we do is we have, if something is reported to us as potentially misinformation, important misinformation, we also have this third-party fact-checking program because we don't want to be deciding what's true and false. And for I think it was 5 or 7 days when it was basically being determined whether it was false, the distribution on Facebook was decreased, but people were still allowed to share it. So you could still share it, you could still consume it.
So when you say the distribution is decreased,
it got shared.
How does that work?
It basically, the ranking in newsfeed was a little bit less. So fewer people saw it than would have otherwise. So it definitely.
By what percentage?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it's meaningful.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say it's meaningful. So I want to read some of these little snippets from his letter, and then let's talk about like why is he doing this all of a sudden right now? So he says there's a lot of talk right now around how the U.S. government interacts with companies like Meta, and I want to be clear about our position. Our platforms are for everyone. We're about promoting speech and helping people connect in a safe and secure way. Oh, wait, that's not a joke. It's actually serious. I was just laughing to myself because their platforms have definitely not been for me. I don't know what your experiences have been, but they are definitely looking for every single way to demonetize and throttle my content. So I thought that was a joke, but I don't think it is. So in 2021, senior officials from the Biden administration, including the White House, repeatedly pressured our teams for months to censor certain COVID-19 content, including humor and satire, and expressed a lot of frustration with our teams when we didn't agree. Ultimately, it was our decision whether or not to take content down, and we own our decisions. I believe the government pressure was wrong, and I regret that we were not more outspoken about it. He goes on to talk about the FBI laptop pressure. In a separate situation, he said, the FBI warned us about a potential Russian disinformation operation about the Biden family and Burisma in the lead up to the 2020 election. It's since been made clear that the reporting was not Russian disinformation, and in retrospect, we shouldn't have demoted the story. We no longer temporarily demote things in the U.S. while waiting for fact checkers. So he goes on to talk about, he's like, oh, by the way, I made a lot of political contributions last cycle. I actually don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle. So he said, the idea here was to make sure local election jurisdictions across the country had the resources they needed to help people vote safely during the pandemic. They were designed to be nonpartisan. What are you talking about? I was totally nonpartisan. And he says he didn't see that it benefited one party one way or the other. So I don't plan on making a similar contribution this cycle. Now, this is a very bizarre chain of events for Mark Zuckerberg because he was like the Biden-Harris lackey, helping them censor disinformation, which actually just ended up being true. And he also had this weird moment after I say weird coming from him, this weird moment after Donald Trump got shot where he actually said that Donald Trump looked badass, and it was an awesome moment. Watch.
Seeing Donald Trump get up after getting shot in the face and pump his fist in the air with the American flag is one of the most badass things I've ever seen in my life.
So I'm like, is he being genuine in his evolution? Is he trying to get ahead of something coming? Like, what is going on that you have Mark Zuckerberg continuing to sound the alarm about something that he was actually kind of implicated in?
I did nothing wrong. I might not do it again. And the programming running me is off.
Right.
I think is all you can take from it is, he's not a very likable person as it stands. Although maybe his, playing around with the, extreme fighting or whatever it is he's been doing recently, maybe that's rubbing off. You don't find many, woke lefties running around that world. So maybe that's having a positive benefit on him. But look, Facebook has been a dumpster fire, a pro-totalitarian dumpster fire for going on 8 years. And I think for Mark Zuckerberg, he's probably just kind of looking around going, oh no, it's only 87-year-old, cat ladies wanting to share lesbian memes from the 60s. So maybe we need to step back a little bit because, big surprise, not much advertising dollars goes to that demographic.
Right. Yeah. So maybe this is more of a calculated business decision.
He knows what time it is. He's seeing the time. And I think for all of us who are rightly worried about the direction of the election and everything else, when you see someone like Mark Zuckerberg sitting there talking like you just saw him talking, makes you think, maybe he understands what time it is better than some of our neighbors and friends do.
Yeah, I mean, because it's one thing to think it, right? He could think it and just as easily not say it out loud for all of his leftist friends to pick apart. But he went the extra mile and was just like, I'm saying it.
Well, I think some of it has to do with Twitter. I mean, if you actually watch the Joe Rogan thing, he mentions Twitter multiple times. And I do believe that maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there, hypothetical, because it's not like I know, but what Elon basically, he cut his company down to like a third. We had the Twitter files, so it was exposing what Twitter was doing before he had got in, and the collusion, quite literal collusion with the United States federal government, right? Mm-hmm. So he looks at that, and basically Elon went, I don't want to even say he went unscathed. I would at least say in our eyes, maybe not in the leftists, but in our eyes, he's seen as more of a positive figure, comparatively speaking, because, Twitter has now become this space of the major social media platforms where people, not to say there isn't some level of censorship that's there, but comparatively speaking, I don't feel threatened to be like, let's say, kicked off of the damn platform like I do with a Facebook / Instagram, as well as some of the other platforms. So maybe it's like, it's safe now. It could be a combination of it all. I mean, I think you bring up a great point. We know that he's getting involved with mixed martial arts a lot. I don't know how close he is to Dana. We know where he's slanted, and maybe that has something to do. It's a cultural thing, right? And maybe being around that culture, he's like, okay, maybe I've been misled. Yeah. Now, maybe that's giving him a lot of the benefit of the doubt. For sure does not absolve Facebook of what they did before. But I try to be as someone who wants, and I think Mark Zuckerberg is around my age, and as someone that, years ago, I was a leftist, like we're talking like 18 years ago. So people change, right? And you want to always leave that opening for someone to be able to do that. But yeah, he's going to have to say a lot more than just that for me to be like, oh, okay, he's really turning a new leaf here.
Yeah, I mean, and to his credit, he did say, "I regret that we caved to the pressure." And part of me really wants to make him take all of the blame possible for that. But we've talked about this a lot on the show, Eric, is that I also think that it is so wholly inappropriate for the government to be putting pressure on a private business. Like, imagine how much pressure you feel when the freaking White House is banging down your door. Like, do you really want to be responsible for X, Y, and Z with all of this, I mean, what would you do? I'd like to believe that as a business owner, I'd be like, screw you. But imagine being put in that position and cornered by is there someone higher than the president? No. So it's like,
and the thing of the words he used talked about, well, we're not going to do this in the United States.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Right.
and you're dealing with someone who's censoring content in a lot of countries in a lot of places.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's a good reminder that some of these folks are getting a lot of pressure, and we shouldn't discount that. I'm less interested than his mea culpas from 2019, 2022, but I am as what's this cat going to be doing in October of 2024? Right. What is February of 2025 going to look like? Is he going to revert to norm and capitulate to the Kamala Harris, or is he going to be a little more bold and standing up for the rights of people, the inalienable right of all people to speak freely?
Yeah, you'd like to believe that you don't come out and make comments like this. You don't come out and write letters like this to Congress if you don't plan on following through with it. You would think. But so I know we got to take a break and we'll be back with more. But I do want to bring up, again, I feel like I have to stress this every time we talk about this conversation. It is great that we know what we now know about Twitter. It is great that we know what we now know about Facebook. There is one glaringly obvious platform that is like the majority of video content that still we have no way in. We have no way of knowing how much they influenced the last election. That is, of course, YouTube. Mm-hmm. I mean, they are censoring the tar out of people. My YouTube's been demonetized for over a year now for saying true things. I remember there was a video, you were probably on it, Eric. There was a video from the old show where we got the entire Blaze TV YouTube account nuked for like an entire month because we literally cited a study on the COVID vaccine on pregnant women. I'm just reading the numbers. And so, it's good that we're getting this information now. It's like, okay, yay, great. Now you're admitting to it. But there are other platforms that are still incredibly vulnerable that we have not done anything about.
And this goes to the importance of Ken Paxton and some of these attorneys general around the nation starting to hold Google accountable, asking these big questions about the power that we in the marketplace and then government collusion all have given to some of these corporate actors and the monopoly they now have. Oh, it's one thing to have a monopoly over cornflakes or something. It's something else to have a monopoly over facts,
right?
Truth, over that's scary stuff.
Yeah. Speaking of Ken Paxton, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and then when we come back, let's talk about the latest with Biden's plan to reward 1 million illegals with citizenship. We'll be back. So speaking of Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he's just racking up the wins lately. So he got on X last night and shared a document from the U.S. District Court, the Eastern District of Texas. State of Texas versus U.S. Department of Homeland Security. He wrote, breaking, we have temporarily blocked Biden's unlawful new parole in place program. Biden's unconstitutional scheme would have rewarded over 1 million illegal aliens with the opportunity for citizenship after breaking our country's laws and incentivized countless more. This is just the first step. We're going to keep fighting for Texas, our country, and the rule of law. So big win. Again, he keeps racking them up. But just as you stated earlier, Michael, it's like, well, it's kind of weird that we have to say that in 2024. This is another thing. It's like, it's kind of strange that our state AG has to fight with the federal administration to this extent. I realize he worked with several different entities here, but he is on the front lines fighting our federal government to the extent that he's like, please stop allowing illegal people into our country. why do we have to go to court over something like that to fight the federal government is just beyond me.
There are a very small, limited number of things that the U.S. Constitution says the federal government is supposed to do. One of them is protect the country. You stop foreign invaders. That's literally in the job description, and that's the one thing the Biden administration want to do. They want to regulate, what your shoes are made of. They want to tell you what to drive. They want to tell you how, where your power comes from. All these things they want to tell you. No one's in the Constitution, but they don't want to do the one thing they're supposed to do. And in part of that sense, because that's what empowers them is chaos. What empowers Democrats, what empowers bureaucrats anywhere is misery and chaos among the people. The more misery and chaos there is, the more you need, your government saviors to step in. And this is where Ken Paxton, we're coming up on the year anniversary of his trial in the Texas Senate for the goofy, crazy, insane impeachment generated by the Texas House. And we said it a year ago, and I think it's being proven true now, Sarah, that Ken Paxton was impeached by the Texas House because he was willing to fight big tech, big pharma, and to fight for secure borders. There are a lot of business interests, and we don't like to talk about this. We're free marketeers, we're conservatives, we don't like to talk about this, but there are business interests who really would much rather have a steady stream of quasi-slave labor coming across the border that they can exploit and then throw away, who don't have the knowledge or the rights of how to go to court and demand correct pay and back pay and whatever else they have. And Ken Paxton is saying no to that stuff. That's why he was impeached.
Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, look, you know how I feel about when the states, particularly Texas, combats the federal government. I love for it to happen more often.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Because I'm all for decentralization. I think we need more of it. I think there needs to be more states telling them to screw off. And I think once that ends up happening, I think what ends up inevitably happening is that people can focus on the geographical area that they live in. The fact that we have to deal with these issues that the federal government are completely unfit to solve is the fundamental problem. I shouldn't need to be combating the federal government for anything. Right? If there is a battle to be had, it should be against my state and local government. So the fact that in something like this, where obviously you have this border between Texas and another country, and there's conflict that happens there all the time, I just think it's asinine to me that the federal government is supposed to take care of those issues, but the part that really, really gets me is that should they fail and then you do something that they don't like, they try to criminalize you or they try to criminalize the state of Texas. That's insane to me. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. So I do think there needs to be, especially with folks on the right, like a legitimate conversation like that we need to start having about decentralization, because how much longer do we have to put up with this incompetence by the federal government? We're under this expectation that they're supposed to do said thing. Like, to your point, it's in their job description. It's the one thing that they're supposed to. All the other stuff they do, they ain't even supposed to be doing.
They're doing none of the things they're supposed to do.
This is the one thing they're supposed to do. And then they don't do it. And because they don't do it, it impacts what happens in our geographical area. So they're telling us right there that they're not suited for the job. So somebody, it still has to get, the problem's still the problem.
Yeah. We are kind of reaching the point, Eric, where, are they incompetent? Or are they very competent?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think we're starting to see that. We wrote yesterday, day before, about Kamala Harris losing 290,000 children, according to Inspector of Children, unaccompanied minors. And you think, well, that's either gross incompetence or it's
it's like intentional,
real competent. Yeah. It's really competent activity, and I think that's where we are. They're evil. They're not incompetent. They're evil.
Exactly. And so, I mean, to your point, I think, I like to stress this is the Biden-Harris administration that is all in on bringing in as many people as they possibly can and then allowing them, giving them a pathway to citizenship. Well, the Harris in the Biden-Harris administration, who is currently running for a future office of presidency, she clearly knows that her illegal immigration policies are unpopular and unelectable, which is why now she's all of a sudden flip-flopping. So let's just do a little flashback when, Donald Trump was president and Kamala called his border wall idea a vanity project and un-American.
This issue is about a vanity project for this president. Right. And it is a problem of his own making. You don't need to build a wall. This is a crisis of his own making. And by definition, just plain speak, basic English language definition, it is not an emergency. It's the president's vanity project. Listen, if we deconstruct, get the pun, deconstruct wall. Prosecutor for many years, including the Attorney General of California. I specialize on transnational criminal organizations. Yeah. That wall ain't gonna stop them. No.
Watch his cackling like Jesus Christ.
That's not going to stop them.
The wall won't stop them, but a gift bag from Target will stop them.
Right. So, but now she sings a much different tune, to which Axios even had to point out her flip-flopping. Their article said, Harris flip-flops on building the border wall. If she's elected president, Kamala Harris pledges to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on the wall along the southern border, a project she once opposed and called un-American during the Trump administration. It's the latest example of Harris flip-flopping on her past liberal positions, such as supporting Medicare for all and banning fracking. Here in Texas, we say fracking. Proposals that aides say she is now against.
In all fairness, it would at that point be her vanity project, so it'd be okay.
I mean, that's basically what they're saying, right? So, she now says building the border wall is a thing we should do. That's strange. I know a guy who said we should definitely do that before you started bringing in all of the illegal aliens, but you said that he was orange and you hated him.
Well, the immigration thing is, it's really, really interesting. I think they made a core mistake dumping them all in all these liberal cities, right? And these leftist cities, which they acted as these safe havens. But then you had these other people that lived there for their entire lives, and they saw what happened. And also the unfair treatment that happens, as far as the welfare state is, what you give them versus what you don't provide to people that are around. And so on the very subject of immigration, their own base is starting to differ on this in comparison to what they may be in terms of their positions maybe 4 or 5 years ago, especially in cities like Chicago and all that. And you always hear these subjects that have been there. They've lived, citizens that have lived there, and they're like, what in the hell is this, right? This place is uninhabitable. They don't want to live here anymore and all this stuff. And you totally empathize with that. And now we're getting closer to the election where people are going to have to start taking positions. They're going to start getting asked these things, and it's going to be very interesting to see if these are things she's going to say out loud, because I anticipate Democrats do that all the time. This isn't anything new as far as them saying one thing, and then you go look at their policies, and they're a completely different thing. Obama, this is why we call him a deporter-in-chief. This whole idea that Obama was this a guy that wanted everybody to come over, that is bogus. I don't know where that lie came from. He might have said that, but I'm just looking at the sheer statistic. He deported more people than anybody did before him. So it's a really interesting thing to see. But now, and we'll see what happens with these debates, I would love for Trump to start holding her feet to the fire and let her out of her own mouth. Not in a document, not in some article or something that's buried. I want her to start taking positions on immigration.
Well, let's go ahead. Let's we got to take a break here, but before we do, I want to show you guys Donald Trump made a fabulous ad of Kamala just debating herself. Watch.
Everyday prices are too high. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes. That is called Bidenomics. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today. Ground beef is up almost 50%. There's not much left at the end of the month. Bidenomics is working. The price of housing has gone up. It feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. And we are very proud of Bidenomics.
All right. So, Michael, I mentioned at the beginning of the show, you have a new documentary out. It is called Red Power, China's Grip on the Future of Texas. And I want to play a little bit of the trailer, and then I want to come back and talk to you a little bit more about it. Watch.
We didn't run out of energy. We're just running out of freedom. 4 minutes and 37 seconds. That's how close Texas was from a total power grid collapse.
It is a national security issue. It is probably one of our most important assets.
A Chinese general still plugs directly into ERCOT to this very day. I think that's a bad idea. I think that's a risk.
It's easy to think the biggest threats to Texas's electric grid are a winter storm or an extended heat wave.
Texas isn't as strong as Texans like to say it is. And that's unfortunate.
We're choosing inferior energy that is sourced from arguably our greatest geopolitical threat.
We're actually going backwards in America with reliability. Who thinks that's a good idea?
I bet China thinks it's a good idea.
Everybody needs to start connecting the dots.
Oh, well, that's terrifying.
All cheery stuff. Right?
Yeah. So go ahead.
In order to solve any problem in your life, you first have to recognize you have a problem in your life.
Yeah.
No problem in your life or my life was ever solved by us ignoring the problem's existence.
Right.
And that is the same for individuals as it is for nations. We have a problem. We have allowed ourselves to become worshipers at the climate hysteria church. Mm-hmm. And one of the sacraments of the Church of Climate Hysteria is wind and solar. And look, I have nothing against solar panels. I have nothing against wind generators, except for the fact that 80% of a solar panel and somewhere between 30 and 70% of a wind generator are made in China. Right? But if you want to set up a solar panel to power a gate on your property or have a windmill that you use to operate, whatever, that's fine. Instead, in Texas, we've put something like a third to half of our electric grid at the hands of what is arguably, ancient technology. Solar panels fail every day at sunset. Right. Wind only blows 0.25% of the time.
Or we found out a couple years ago, if it gets too cold, the windmills get frozen.
It freezes. And here we're turning to China to provide all this stuff. China, who they say explicitly they want to destroy America. Mm-hmm. And so we were saying, oh, fine, make us less efficient, make us less productive. You had California Governor Gavin Newsom say, okay, we want to get rid of nuclear power. We want to get rid of all these coal-fired plants. We want to, everyone on solar. And 6 days later, he's begging Californians not to be charging their electric vehicles because they didn't have enough power. I mean, this is insane. Right. This is something out of some weird dystopian future that we're creating for ourselves, Sarah. And we need folks to understand that.
And I think you're right, because there's two separate issues here, right? There's the issue of green energy and where that leads. And then there's the issue of just standing idly by while China seems to be able to get, we're talking about the state of Texas that has still not banned the CCP from owning Texas land.
You have a massive wind farm down near Lackland Air Force Base, owned by a red Chinese general. There's some back and forth of what has he sold, and has he sold it basically to himself. But the bottom line is, with these massive windmills, that with technology that Kyle Bass, a businessman from here in Dallas, talks about, that you can map down to a square inch in resolution, where you can peer onto that Air Force Base, where we do both classified and unclassified things day in and day out. That's kind of important. That's the kind of thing you don't want your enemies to be able to do. And yet that's what we have allowed China to do. In many ways, a friend of mine likes to say that your strength is also your weakness. Our strength as Americans has been our devotion to the free market. But if we're not careful and we start worshiping the free market rather than using it as a tool for liberty, it's being used against us right now by people saying, oh, well, fine, if some Chinese general wants to come in and use it to spy on my fellow Americans, but if I get a good deal on it, great. Right. You and I, Sarah, need to start saying, let's discuss this.
Right.
Is our nation's future worth the 30 pieces of silver that you got from that Chinese general?
Right. Well, and Eric, it's not like we learned anything from COVID as trusting China. It's not like it's not like our medication supply shut down and all that.
That's all part of it, but I would make the argument that none of this has anything to do with Because if the market was truly free, nuclear energy would basically be the number one thing that we'd be investing in.
Right.
But you look at, including in Texas, right, where all of the as far as the funding, right, and where it's being routed towards things like wind as well as solar, which again, in isolation, great. You got your own acreage, 10 acres, and you want to throw a wind tunnel or a wind deal up there. If you want to throw some solar panels, if you want to have a solar field or you want to put it on your house, whatever, do what you will. But the fact that we're not I don't know how they've been so successful in fear mongering with the whole nuclear energy. I can't take anybody serious talking about renewable energy while not investing in it.
If they don't talk about nuclear. Right.
And China is building new nuclear plants, they've got a schedule. I think they're building 100 in the next couple of years. They're building new coal-fired plants, one every 3 days right now.
Wow.
And while we're sitting there, hoping that, when it's 100 degrees outside, your AC will work. When it drops down to 10 degrees, that maybe, the power will come on and you can heat up your grandmother's house. That's insane. That's not the way it's supposed to be. We're uninventing reliability in our electric grid, which makes us, very vulnerable as a people to those who do us harm.
So who would you, by the way, I would encourage everyone to go watch this. You can go to texasscorecard.com/redpower to watch it. But who do you... Is there shared blame? Whose fault is this that this is happening?
So much blame. Certainly the federal government. Big blame. The Biden administration with the Inflation Reduction Act, the most stupidly named piece of legislation ever. Putting all this money there. The state bears some blame. The week before the big winter storm in Texas that shut everything down for a week, 4 minutes away from losing our grid forever, there was Greg Abbott accepting an award from the renewable energy people and bragging about it. Everyone's bragging about it. So you got the state problem. The way you can stop it, though, and this is the kind of where the rubber meets the road. Wind and solar only works with subsidies. They only work with subsidies. They're grossly inexpensive. Were it not for the subsidies, you wouldn't have them. And those can be stopped actually locally because the wind and solar people, they need the federal subsidy, the state subsidy, and they need the local subsidy. Putting pressure on your school board members, on your county officials, on your city officials, that can stop these. And we have a lot of evidence. That's the good news with this, Sarah, is we have lots of examples of folks who have stopped it. You can stop Red China. You can stop the unreliability. All it takes is for us to start being involved locally.
Yeah. And so make sure that get involved locally, obviously, but also go check out the film today, texasscorecard.com/redpower. We will be right back. Before we go, I wanted to highlight this Washington Post article. They published an op-ed titled, Doug Emhoff, Modern Day Sex Symbol. This is written by Catherine Rampell, who is, believe it or not, an award-winning journalist covering economics, public policy, immigration, and politics. And also Doug Emhoff being sexy, apparently. She said, Doug Emhoff has been called many things in recent years. Second gentleman, goofy dad, crappy Jew. That's mean. But perhaps his most appropriate title, progressive sex symbol. Move over, Ryan Gosling. The modern female fantasy is embodied by the man who might soon become our first gentleman. Most important for this sexy, so I don't even know how to say that word. What is it? Sobricht? Emhoff is secure enough with his own masculinity to sometimes prioritize his wife's ambitions over his own. What a hunk. I'm going to call that fake news. That is not. Nope. That is propaganda is what that is. You are not going to tell me that Doug Emhoff is a modern day sex symbol. No, absolutely not. No, Catherine, no.
You're the one most qualified because I'm not gay, so I can't quite speak on it. But
Can you also confirm you are also not gay? Can't speak to it.
Yeah, no, can't be.
Let me just tell you guys.
It does give me great help, though.